Started. I'm Bill Banham. I am one of the co-founders of InnovateWork, and this is our first InnovateWork in the Midwest, in the beautiful Twin Cities. And we've got a fantastic lineup for you today, and this is going to be the first of many events in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We're pretty lucky that we're kind of getting all over the world now. We're all across North America. We started off in Toronto in 2017, myself and a very handsome chap called Rob Catalano from a company called Work Tango. We did our first event January 2017. It was a cold night in Rob's office, and we had about 75 people show up. And then from there, we've started to grow a community, and now we host events all across North America and the UK and Australia, and we continue to expand. So why did we create InnovateWork? Well, we wanted to create a community really to do three main things: to educate, to engage, and to inspire people to improve the world of work. And in today's session, you're going to be inspired. Oh my goodness me, you're going to be so inspired, you won't believe it. We start off with this brief introduction for myself before I introduce the wonderful Lisa Sterling. And then we're going to get into 4 Passion Series talks. Now, our Passion Series talks are 9 minutes. Feel free to time our speakers. They are under pressure to keep it under 9, or to keep it at 9 minutes, followed by a Q&A, which will last for about 30 minutes. So before we do get going, just in terms of the techie stuff, okay, there are a couple of different options that you can use to interact with us, and we please do encourage you to interact with us. One is to chat, to share your thoughts, to feedback on all of the presentations, and the other is the Q&A box. And the Q&A box is really important because that's your chance to ask our speakers questions during the panel session. So get your questions ready, please. And the individual speakers will not be answering those after their particular sessions. Instead, we're going to hold all of those and then ask them in the 30-minute Q&A. Now, you're probably familiar with Zoom. I think most of the world is pretty much familiar with Zoom right now. But just in terms of your options, you've got your speaker view. Okay, so you can switch things up here by going to the top right, or indeed if you want to see multiple speakers, again, all those options there in the top right. So you can play about with that at your end to maximize your enjoyment. This event is brought to you today by Work Tango, and that is a fantastic technology which allows employees to offer real-time feedback and to check the pulse of employee engagement. And some online magazine called the HR Gazette, which I started back in 2014. Please do check that out. And also the HR Chat Show. One of our most recent guests is the awesome Jess Von Bank, who is one of our speakers today. So your hosts, there's some dude called Bill Banham, that's me from the HR Gazettes, but then we've got the real stars. We've got Lisa Sterling, who is a board member and Conversation Committee Chair at ThinkX. We've got the wonderful Deb Lemaire, Vice President of HR at DataSite, and the equally awesome Regan Mannery, who's the Program Manager over at Ceridian. And your speakers for today will be the fantastic Ted Malley, Chairman of the Board, well, I believe he's now recently become the CEO, so congratulations, Ted, over at ThinkX. Jess Von Bank, Global Community Leader and Head of Marketing at LeapGen. Jason Bruce, who is a corporate recruiter at Best Buy, and Amy Roy, who is the Chief People Officer over at Namely. Okay, so with that said, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce you all to the wonderful, the awesome, the super famous, the influencer, that is Lisa Sterling. Lisa, why don't you come on and tell everybody a little bit about why you and the team decided to get going here in the Twin Cities.
Absolutely, and thanks. Wow, I like that introduction. I'm going to take you with me at every conference and just get introduced like that. It was super simple and awesome. So thank you. Well, good afternoon or good evening, depending upon where you're calling from. I'm not sure if we have any folks outside of the U.S. that decided to join today, but I'm super excited to be here. Bill and I have known each other for some time now, and both have a real passion for just this whole concept around how we can innovate work, how we can create value through human capital. And that's really kind of a lot of the emphasis on what he's been doing with the HR Gazette, with his HR chat, and now with InnovateWork, as he's rolling that out across the globe. And so when we were talking about this, of course, I raised my hand and said, hey, I would love to start something in Minneapolis. We have a wonderful HR community with some incredible companies like Best Buy, that Jason Bruce is from today, Target, United Healthcare. We just have some rock solid companies that are based there, and knew it would be a great opportunity to launch something new. The thing I want to be really cognizant of, though, is this is not just an HR program. This really is about innovating work. And as you hear from our elite panelists today, you will see that the things that they're bringing to the table are relevant. They're things they're passionate about. I love that Bill calls this the Passion Series, because it really is an opportunity for us to talk about all things culture, all things people, all things innovation. I love to be disruptive. So when people talk about things around disruption, it definitely gets me excited and ready to go. So this is our first event. We are going to be hosting a series of these. We already have our next event scheduled for November 18th. So for those of you that joined today, we'll be getting that registration link up before we know it, as we're solidifying our next series of panelists. And then fingers and toes crossed, we are going to launch our first in-person event in Q1 of 2021, assuming that we come out of this state that we're in right now and can be back together as a group. So I'm super excited about what the future looks like. And I'm hoping that after today, each of you goes out and shares the InnovateWork website with your friends, your family, your colleagues, et cetera, and really encourages them to get more involved in the conversation as we move forward into future events. So if you have questions about it, as Bill said, pop them in the chat box. Reagan and Deb, these wonderful colleagues of mine, are going to be answering questions as we go, and they don't just have to be about the presentations that you see. They can definitely be about the InnovateWork community as well. So with that, I get the great honor to introduce our first panelist today, and I couldn't have gotten a more lovely individual to actually invite or introduce. Amy Roy, as Bill mentioned, is the Chief People Officer at Malley. Amy is also an incredibly dear friend of mine. I had the great privilege and honor of working with her when I was the Chief People and Culture Officer at Ceridian. She has one of the most incredible backgrounds in terms of not being your most traditional HR leader. She has been in sales and sales operations, in marketing and client service. So she understands all the inner workings of an organization. But most importantly, she's probably one of the most authentic and genuine individuals I know when it comes to really being thoughtful about how to innovate work, how to create new experiences for people, and really how to be a delightful leader that people want to rally around and rally behind. So it is my honor, Amy, to turn it over to you and let you wow this amazing group of people with your brilliance.
Well, wow, this pressure on intros is growing. So thank you, Lisa. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I really am excited to be part of such an inaugural event. So thank you for including me. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about something that, as Lisa said, I'm very passionate about, which is around engagement and making sure that we're taking advantage of how we can best engage our people. And let's face it, for those of you who are in HR roles today, it's been challenging. I mean, I'll speak, for myself, from an organizational perspective, we've gone through moving people to a remote status, being concerned about our own health and the health of our families, the health of our employees, all of the fatigue that comes along with that's come through the last few months, and even how people continue to go day by day through staying engaged with work when all of this other swirl is going around us. And so in terms of how I thought we would take a look at engagement, I brought up this pyramid of what I think has changed as it relates to COVID. And in order for people, I'll leave you with this, I'll start with this thought is around, in order for people to be engaged, as a general definition is how you bring your best self to work. But there are different ways and different things that have to happen in order for people to bring their best selves. Many of you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. I'll call this the COVID-19 hierarchy of needs. And if we start from the bottom, it's about thinking about health and wellness. Realistically, people are not going to be able to think about their job in the same way when they're concerned about their health. That's their physical health, but more and more we're seeing as it relates to their mental health, putting through the strains of financial components, physical components, and also just the health of whether or not they'll be able to continue with their lifestyle in the way that they're used to handling it. And so in thinking about this as it relates to engagement, the first component is, are you providing a workplace that is truly safe for your people? Are you providing, for example, if you're returning to work, the right ways that people can return into offices? Do people feel comfortable in doing that? And I think if you see the way that this pyramid is drawn, and usually a pyramid has a much stronger bottom than the next layer up, but you'll see in this example, health and wellness from the bottom layer really go hand in hand with safety and security. Do people feel physically safe to come in? Do they feel mentally safe to come in? Do they have a place where they can be themselves? Besides the concerns around COVID, and again, this one could start back in March, but we've seen a lot of things go on over the last few months, lots of things around social justice and how we look at race relations within our offices. We also continue and always see things about people being safe as it relates to feeling bullied, related to harassment. And so in terms of thinking through engagement, before we can get to the higher levels of people really being more productive, we have to take these away as barriers. And I'll share with you in a few minutes how we've done some of those things at Malley. But if you're not thinking in terms of how people are feeling safe, not only physically, but also how they're feeling about their jobs, then they may not be fully engaged. I recently had a dialogue just within the last couple of weeks around people feeling that their job will still be there. Very difficult to focus on your work day by day if you've got this concern in the back of your head that you're not going to have your income coming in, or that every day I'm walking on eggshells about my job. It leads to, one of the things that we're trying to avoid, which is employee turnover, especially our high performers, because they're concerned about what the future might look like. So again, making sure that people are both physically and mentally secure is your step 2 in this pyramid towards engagement. And then we get into social connectedness and belonging. And this one is a big one right now. People who never have worked from home before are feeling it. People who are also doing it at the same time as their children are home, certainly have people around, but don't necessarily have the same level of being connected as they used to when they would come into an office and sit down on a Monday morning and check in. Or even if they're not working, think about your own lives. I know, Lisa's at the soccer field a lot, but I can tell you from my soccer parent days that, that was a great place to feel connected. And when that gets taken away, you really start to feel like something is missing. So again, when we think about our work environments, the idea that before I can really get to doing the right things at work, that I need to make sure that my people have this box checked off is really, truly critical. And that is when you get through the first 3, then you can really start to put in programs that are around recognition and career development and really going to transformation, or as Lisa likes to say, being a little disruptive in terms of how people look at work. And so if you're sitting today with a problem or something you're trying to accomplish and you're saying, how can we transform? How do we get our people on board to really do that? Think about starting from the bottom and making sure you're really touching all bases before you try and hit that top part of it. And it's difficult. You know, the thing about benefits is that there's no universal piece. People in different age group have different needs. People have in different parts of their life, married, unmarried, you know, long-term in their career, short-term in their career, all have different pieces. And so as you're looking at benefits, as you go into your open enrollment periods, you know, it may be time that you want to start thinking a little bit differently. So at Namely, we did really two things when we thought about wellness. One was an employee survey. We've also done some small groups and getting feedback from all people. And we also put out the call for a wellness committee. And we run a lot of different committees at Namely. Wellness has been part of our culture, but we didn't have a wellness committee per se. And when I put this out, we're a small organization. We immediately had 22 people in 5 minutes sign up to be part of this. And we set some goals to build a corporate wellness model and to make sure that we're putting in the right programs and to provide an opportunity for everyone to get involved, because wellness is a really wide scale, everything from financial components, social components, physical components. And so, you know, a much broader spectrum even than that. I'll cover it all. But, you know, this became a key part of how we decided to take on dealing with some of these stressors related to the recent events. And so I would say if it's important to you, you know, make it a big deal. We've used our ERGs to help with this. We've used our parent groups specifically. We've created a big splash. We had a wellness month with programs of all types, physical wellness, mental, throughout the course of a month. We've today declared that we're going to have an additional company holiday this year for World Mental Health Day, and have provided a stipend for people to go out and do something to take some fun moments. But it's more than just a one-time event. We have a full year's worth of calendar activities, and have been doing a lot of different ways of communicating, whether it be through Slack channels, all hands meetings, emails, posts on our newsfeed. Again, it really bringing everyone together to make sure we're hitting those bottom parts of that pyramid before we start adding on additional programs for this year. And of course, we have to measure its ongoing effectiveness. I will tell you, some programs are more well received than others, and that's how you grow and change and make sure that you have the right things in place. I believe that's about my 9 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing, and of course encourage you, if you have any questions, to put them in for the panel. And I'm going to now pass over the mic to Mr. Ted Malley. And so I will share with you that Ted and I have known each other for a number of years. We had the opportunity originally to meet when he was in the process of selling a technology tool called Team Relate to our prior employer. And you know, what I learned very quickly about Ted is that he really prioritizes communication between people, whether that's a manager-employee relationship or just how peers work together. By hearing from different parts of your employees in your business, it really allows you to drive change, and be able to take that change and create a technology to do that is really amazing. And so Ted was then the customer success officer at Ceridian, bringing that philosophy to our customers, and then now has moved on and is the CEO of ThinkX. And so it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and Mr. Ted Malley.
Hey, thanks so much, Amy. It's good to be with everybody. Bill, I'm trying to start my video, and it says I need to be able to have the host allow me to do that. So I'll keep trying. And it's great to be with everybody today. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation, and it's fun to be with friends and just enjoy some new thoughts around things. So what I want to talk about today is really ThinkX and how you can activate your potential. And I think one of the things that as Amy mentioned, I love helping people maximize their lives, their livelihoods, their performance, both at work and at home. And it's just been a super great opportunity to work with Team ThinkX and to be able to do that just really in a full-time capacity. And so one of the things that I think about is, as we go through this, is as Amy referenced, we're in this really weird season where everything is different. There's nothing that we would say is really a normal part of our lives. And I have to go to my inspiring friend, Danny McCaskill, to just share how I think about a lot of this stuff. Get used to different. And if you've ever seen Danny McCaskill is a professional stunt cyclist, and thank you, Bill, I'm starting my video now. And you can see that this guy, a day at the gym for him is taking this amazing mountain bike and doing all kinds of amazing tricks. And I would encourage you highly to go to YouTube, Google Danny McCaskill's Gymnasium, and watch that. Not until I'm done speaking, please. But you will be amazed and in awe at this gentleman's agility, balance, and doing things that you never thought possible on a bike. And so, but I think as we look at our current season, doesn't it seem to you that we're all kind of in this little bit of a fog that we call COVID? And then you add all of the things that are going on in the country on top of that, racially, politically, there's just so many things that are bombarding us and our workforce. And I think as leaders, it's interesting how we need to gear up for that. We need to just acknowledge what's going on and gear our thinking towards that. And I'll just share with you a very personal example in the Malley household. Some of you may know my wife Penny and I, we have 4 kids, and we have 2 of them that supposedly launched for college this fall. And guess what? They're not. And so in the Malley household, which is where I'm broadcasting from, we have anywhere from 4 to 6 active Zoom sessions representing the 2 that are in college, the 2 that are in high school. And you know, Dad here had to upgrade my bandwidth to get a gigabit cable. I had to get the fastest, most expensive home router equipment just to be able to maintain our new normal in the Malley household. And so it's so this is kind of what it reminds me of with the Brady Bunch and Zoom. So we are getting used to a new normal and getting used to a lot different. And so when you think about that, science and research would say we have about 30 to 40,000 thoughts every day. 70% of those thoughts that we have are negative, whether they're critical of ourselves or the world around us. And I think we'd all agree that the world around us, there's a lot to be critical of. But I also think, if we think about it, we are our own worst critics. And 85% of those thoughts that are negative are recurring thoughts that we had when we woke up yesterday. So it's super thrilling to me to think about how can we do different, because the battle really is won and lost in our minds. And so I wanted just to introduce you to some thoughts that I think about that you may be able to take away to your teams and your workforces. Our thinking, and we all get this, our thinking determines our behaviors and our performance. And if our assumptions and beliefs come from our subconscious, those are created by life events. I'll give you a great example. I have a almost 16-year-old son named TJ who's learning how to drive. And it's a white knuckler the first time he got in that car, because I had to show him what to do, what not to do. I don't have a handbrake in the middle, so that freaks me out because it deals with my own need for control issues, especially when it's in my automobile, even if it's in a parking lot. And I realized that the things that I subconsciously do while I'm driving a car, while we all drive cars, those of us who've driven for years, you don't even think about. Your mind, your body, it just reacts to pedestrians in a sidewalk, a red light, and our subconscious kicks in and our actions become automatic. And the same is true as we approach the workforce. So our assumptions and belief comes from a subconscious pre-learned behavior deep in our brains. And we build the structure of our thinking on that foundation of our assumptions and beliefs. And so if you look at our thinking driving how we show up in the world, at home and at work, it's really important to recognize what's going on now and really gear our thinking around that. And our interactions with others are also related to that as well. And our competencies and behaviors really play into our actions and results and our overall sense of well-being that Amy had talked about. And so you find that life is about 15% of what actually happens that we really can't control, and most of it is our reaction to those life events. And I'm going to introduce you really quickly to a science that really takes you to the cognitive, deep thinking layers of your brain. It's not just an assessment that maybe shows the tip of the iceberg, but I would say that what we're doing at ThinkX, which is really interesting, really takes you on the deep sea scuba diving versus just snorkeling around the surface. And so again, just to share with you kind of how I process this and how we process it at ThinkX, you can imagine a system where you can measure how your brain thinks. And you may have consider maybe 5 areas of the brain that are positive, that you want to really stress. You could have ambition, confidence, interpersonal relationships, relational, systematic. But then you also have things that maybe stress you. These would be called your stress drivers, and things that if you're elevated in your stress drivers, that's not so good, and how you're processing things aren't so good. By the way, if you're a highly interpersonal person, you're going to have a struggle because you can't get with people during COVID. You have to kind of make up for that as you're Zooming with them during the day. Did you know that, by the way, that Zoom is a verb now? Just like I won't call you, I will Zoom you. And it's kind of interesting even how our words change. But if you look at also a couple other components, our anxiety and our thinking speed. These are critical things to drive how we show up in the workplace and at home. And so, so I think we're excited to be focusing on this because it not only addresses the well-being of workers, of people who are not working or out of work, to help them through the transition. Our thoughts is where the battle is won and lost. And so as I think about our passion, how do we innovate at work? I think about a couple things that we all should be thinking about. Number one, mind your mind. You need to really be conscious of how you're thinking about yourself and your world around you, that you can sort of capture some of those critical and negative thoughts that you're having around events around you. Keep your good habits. If you're a Starbucks lover like I am, get in the car, go to your favorite coffee shop, get your routine going, maybe stop some of the bad habits like this jar of candy corn I have off camera that you don't see for stress eating. And keep those routines, because that will keep your everything in your life kind of going normal. Optimism is a choice. I recommend you choose it. And one thing I think about every day is what can I be thankful for, and write it down and tell somebody else about it to lift them up as well. And then thirdly, or fifthly rather, is invest your time into people. Me being a people person and having all of this isolation is kind of tough. So reach out and invest that time in people. And then just embrace today and let it teach you empathy and grace towards others. And so that's my sort of TED Talk for today. And it's my pleasure to introduce to the next speaker in our program, Jess Von Bank, a global community leader and head of marketing at a great company named LeapGen. She's a 17-year industry veteran and an impassioned evangelist of the modern employee experience. She is all about this. She used to be a former recruiting practitioner and an expert in bringing HCM solutions to market. You've probably seen her on or heard of her on the Now of Work podcast, and she runs the Now of Work global community along with Jason Averbook. And so we're glad to have you with us. Jess, take it away.
Hi, Ted. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this event. You know what? I'm going to stop sharing for just a second and make sure I've got my material ready here. But I'm so excited about this event, and I'm so excited to be asked to speak about something I'm super passionate about, and that is work. Believe it or not, I'm super passionate about work and how we do it, and designing work for people, not molding people to their work. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to go ahead and put this into presentation mode and silence my Slack. Boy, if this isn't life happening in the moment, right? All right, we're getting there. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, all right, we're going to go back to sharing my screen. Presentation mode. So as Ted mentioned, I run marketing for LeapGen, and I run a global community of HR leaders, HR practitioners, anybody who has anything to do with designing work, addressing workforce experience, and digital transformation of HR and of work. And digital transformation is all about digitizing the experience of work. Now there's digital and there's technology. We make the mistake of mistaking the two quite often. And digital transformation is really a mindset. It's a mindset shift when you think about how to meet people where they are when it comes to work. And so, of course, the temptation, when I know I have 9 minutes to use, the temptation might be to talk about the great calling of HR in 2020, which is to modernize and digitally transform the experience of work. Never more important, right, than what we're experiencing in the now of work. But I thought twice, because I really truly believe that digital transformation really has become about the human disruption of work. And I'm going to explain what that means. And so, as you know, I'm Jess. I live here in downtown Minneapolis, my favorite city in the world, and I run marketing for LeapGen. We are experience evangelists. We talk a lot about transforming work, and the future of work became the now of work overnight. So this was a pretty urgent calling and priority. And that's because the game has changed. It literally changed overnight. If you're doing the same thing today that you were doing at this time last year, or if you're doing it in the same way, I would be completely shocked. And I'd actually like to hear how that's possible, because I can't think of anything that hasn't almost completely and radically transformed itself in the last 6 months. We know that people have changed. The workers, let's call them workers, those of us who are in the workforce have changed forever. What matters, why we do it. We have definitely changed. Business has changed. Some businesses have completely changed what they do, or even if you're providing the same products and services that you did before, how you do it, why you do it, the way you serve your customers has certainly had to transform. There's a reason pivot has become sort of the buzzword that we all love of 2020. And work has changed. Where, how, even when we work. Work has completely changed permanently and forever. One of my pet peeves is that we talk about going back to normal, when things return to normal, back to work, policies and programs. Forget that. We're not going back to normal. Everything has changed permanently and forever, and we can make that a good thing if we're intentional about it. And so when I think about transforming work, digital transformation of work, I actually think about the fact that we've humanized work more than ever before. And I think it's because work sort of barreled into our homes and onto our home fronts, literally overnight, sort of by force, because we had to. We went into lockdown and we had to do things from our home fronts that we might not have been doing before. Or even if you were working virtually before, you had a different set of circumstances, with which to do it. You probably did it with other adults or children or other, factors at play that you're not used to juggling or managing. So the line between life and work and this whole notion of work-life balance, we sort of erased that line. It was blurred for sure, if not completely erased, and work became part of our lives in a way that it never was before. And so I'd like to challenge us to think that whatever that discomfort was, whatever dissonance you felt, whatever the rub was, wherever you felt friction, that rub, that dissonance probably begged for disruption. It probably needed to be disrupted anyway. And so we've just sort of accelerated the need or the opportunity to do that. And I think that that can be a good thing. Now, there are some things that we need to manage and we can be intentional about to make sure that we turn this into a positive, that we don't fully deplete our capacity for resilience and agility. But I think it's a good thing that we have humanized work in ways that we've never humanized it before. And so when we talk about digital transformation, the goal, the nirvana, you could say, is this idea of a frictionless workforce experience. It's about delivering the right information or the right knowledge, the right communication to the right people in the right channel at the right time. That's a frictionless workforce experience. And the closest example I can give you is how you order an Uber, for example, or how you check a flight status, or how you order groceries online. You don't have to navigate. It's not that hard to navigate systems and technologies or to know where to. You literally can use voice commands or touch screens or this handy mobile device in your hands. It's a pretty frictionless workforce experience because, consumer experience, user experience, because it's designed that way. It's designed to be intuitive, to be easy, to be simple, even to be beautiful. And so when it comes to work, for some reason, we haven't done that work. It's not that easy to navigate HR systems and workforce services and HR technologies. It's not actually that easy. The job of being an employee is not actually that easy. And now that we have this rub, now that push has come to shove and we all have to do much more with less or with the same tools, the pressure is on to create an even more frictionless experience, to make it easier for people to do their best work and not make their actual job the work itself. And consider the fact that you have to meet people where they are, and everybody is in a completely different place than they were before. And so I have this, sort of case in point example, and this actually just came to me over the last few days. This idea, this notion of asynchronous versus synchronous experiences. And it came to mind because of my kids. I'm homeschooling, virtual schooling, 3 kids under 11. They started a few weeks ago, 100% virtual. And as I overhear, I can't help because I have to get them all in their little classrooms and Google Meets. And I overhear their classroom interactions and their learning experiences. And it's all very carefully designed and orchestrated between asynchronous and synchronous experiences. Asynchronous, of course, is sort of self-paced, guided. You're provided materials and instruction to work at your own pace. You know what the deliverables are and you're responsible for getting them in, but you're not all live together. You're not all online, facilitated, live, interacting in the same virtual classroom at the same time. Asynchronous versus synchronous. And I'm having these aha moments as I watch them thinking, why haven't we designed work this way? I actually redesigned my own work experience to say, I've got to step away from work at these times on these days because I can't keep those 3 and myself all in video interactions at the same time. And so I have reshifted. I've shifted and I've moved my work around so that I can be synchronous with them and asynchronous with my own team members and my own work when I need to be. And it's that very notion of redesigning work, rethinking, reimagining, redesigning work to meet people where they are instead of asking people to mold themselves to work and to work objectives. It's such a simple concept, but for me, it's really that mindset shift and the permission we have to give ourselves to reimagine and to redesign the experience. And so I like to say, what if, this whole work your way, what if it could actually work? When we all went home to work because we were under stay-at-home orders, we proved that it could be done. We actually proved that people could be productive, that they would be engaged, that they could be efficient and all of those things. And so we addressed the trust issue that I think we used to have around working remotely, working virtually. And now a lot of companies are adopting remote first policies. They have no back to office plans. They're literally redesigning work so that people can work their way, whether it's from home, whether it's without business travel if they used to, with whatever tools, systems, processes they need to be efficient and productive. And we actually are starting to redesign work for people. And I think it's incredibly exciting. Just a couple of things to keep in mind when we do this. When we think about meeting people where they are and letting humans transform work by using human-centered design and people-first design principles when we redesign workforce experience, it's not about monitoring activity. It's not about connecting people to systems and then monitoring activity and performance. It's really about enhancing capabilities and enabling their productivity, making it possible for them to work well, easily, efficiently. And again, it's sort of a mindset shift to think about it in that way. And I caution you, as a working mom, I am one of the demographic that I keep reading about, that this shift in work responsibilities and schedules and the environment that we do it from is putting undue burden on working parents, and specifically working moms. There's so many articles, so many stats out there about the mass exodus of working moms from the workforce because they're feeling sort of a double impact. Perhaps they carried too much weight in other areas of their lives in the first place. And now that this extra burden is being placed on them, they're saying enough is enough. They can't do it. They can't keep, they're prioritizing family and kids' education and their sanity and their health. And they're saying they can't do it, even if they wanted to keep the career plate spinning. So I caution you, this is a statement I feel I need to make. Making work flexible for people, making sure that they have a vote of confidence and the permission they need to sort of flex their hours and move work around, that can easily lead to this double shift, the double shift concept, where I might be homeschooling my kids during the day, but I'm making up all of my workload during the evenings and on the weekends, time that I would otherwise be spending in other areas of my life or caring for myself. So be careful that making work flexible doesn't just move it around and spread people even thinner. Avoid sort of the double shift if you can. Truly restructure work to make it possible for people to complete the most meaningful work when they're able to complete it, even if that requires pulling in other resources to help. And so I love the opportunity that we have in front of us. I truly do. I know that we've been dealing with with crisis after crisis and pandemic after pandemic, the global health pandemic, social justice pandemic, there are financial and job loss impacts. It seems like there can't be much more to add to our plate, and then more comes along. And I get that it's a lot. But I also think we've been handed an incredible opportunity, probably the biggest opportunity any of us will ever see in our careers or even our lives, because there are spans and spans and spans of time in history where not much changes, where not much moves, and transformation feels harder. It's more difficult. You're literally pushing a rock up the hill when you try to make significant movement. And then there are times like now where it's almost handed to you on a platter, and we're in this window of time where you can truly move the needle and transform work. And I think it's all about humanizing work. So that's what I've got to share with you today. Again, thank you so much for having me. I get to hand over the mic. I'll stop sharing my screen. I get to hand over the mic to Jason Bruce, who is, I like to say once a recruiter, always a recruiter. And so I feel like he's one of my own, like he's, akin to what I used to do, which is attract great talent to great brands. And so Jason is a recruiter with Best Buy, and he is up next for us.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And although I work for a tech company, that does not mean I'm technically savvy as well. So give me a little grace on this. So my passion is what I want to think about is how do we stay relevant in this time of change? I'm going to turn my camera on too. Let's make sure that you all can see me. Here we go. Thank you. Is how do we stay relevant in this time of change? So we know that there's a lot of things that's going to happen, and me staying relevant, it starts with Best Buy. So I think about 8 years ago when Best Buy was, we are at the height of our organization. We were building stores. We had growth by sales from those new stores added to the marketplace, but then we had to quickly change because Amazon came on. And so we had to pivot and figure out how we are going to do things better. So we had to start with branding our reputation in the company and outside the company. And that set us up for time like this during this pandemic, because this pandemic, if you listen to all the other speakers before me, has wreaked havoc with the way we were doing things. So how do we learn to do that? And it started with our leadership. I have to say Corey Berry did a fabulous job of communicating things that she didn't know, but communicated the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was keep our employees safe and our customers safe. So we started with that. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we keep our customers loyal? When we had buildings and we had the brick and mortar stores, the generation would come in, I want to say baby boomers or Generation X, that were used to going into the stores, looking and touching and feeling the product. But my daughters are 21 and 24 now, didn't have any clue about a Best Buy. I would say, where you want to get your cell phone case, they would go to Amazon. It's like, I work at Best Buy, you need to go to Best Buy and support Dad's business. So how do we get that generation to be loyal to Best Buy? And when we found out in this pandemic how we could stay relevant by pivoting and making sure that we have curbside service, we had order online where we could deliver it to your door. So there was ways that we could make sure that people got the product when they needed it, because obviously we needed it because people were homeschooling, people were working from home, so they needed the products that Best Buy sells that were essential. Jess talked a little bit about the flexibility in the workforce. We had to make sure that people could work from home. How are we going to have people working from home, and how are they going to be agile and create skill sets? So I think about a skill set in an organization of Best Buy size. Our inclusion and diversity chief officer came over from supply chain. He was not in human resources. He was not in inclusion and diversity, but was able to lead the organization because of his skill set. We have to look at that. And the way, as a recruiter, I'm trying to stay relevant is through building relationships with the customer, or the applicant, if you will, is my customer, and my customer is also the hiring manager. So with the relationship with the applicants and how I stay relevant, and I was thinking about this and presented it to the group is, because of these times, we might find ourselves in this situation where we're looking for roles. So if you think about, okay, what do I need to do? So each applicant that I talk to could be a potential customer. So I want to make sure that I treat them like I'd want to be treated. What does that mean? So it means I have to create
Jason,
yeah.
Jason, sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind sharing your slides? We can't see your slides yet.
Can't see my slides? I'm sharing my slides. I'm just talking. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that.
I'll shut up again. Thank you.
No, that's good. I don't know why it's not. Let me see. You're cutting into my time, Bill.
You get 2 extra minutes, dude.
Okay, good.
Hit share screen, and then if you click
That's
on
what I did.
top left, there should be a little pop-up that comes up for you. If you click on top left, then you should then be sharing screen.
So I hit, okay, I'm sorry. Share screen.
Yeah. And then you get a little pop-up.
Yep.
And then if you click on that pop-up, the top left, you should then be able to share it. And if not, and there's a button at the bottom that says share as well, a blue button.
Okay.
Awesome.
Now, here we go.
Hey.
Now I messed up my whole flow. I have no idea where it was at.
It was fun.
Okay. All right, good. So as I think about the relationship with the applicants, what I want to make sure that I do is treat them like that they want to be treated. Can you still see my screen, right? And create a positive experience for them. So that means building that personal connection, advice on video interviewing, because I know we are going to be doing some interviewing on video, and we're not used to that. So how do I make sure that I connect with them and give them advice on how they can interview over a Snapchat, kind of like this. I'm used to old school where you go in and sit, you put your suit and tie on. And I do give advice to people to put up, maybe dress your best, even when you're behind the desk, because people makes you feel better and work better. One of the things that we also do at Best Buy is provide feedback. One of the things that some companies of our size, they don't do is give that feedback. So when somebody comes in, has an interview, has a conversation with us, how do we tell them if they did not get the role, why they didn't get the role? I think that is something that will help them get better, and hopefully will let them realize that me personally, Jason Bruce as a recruiter has their best interests at heart and wanted to give them the things that's going to help them get better. The way I stay relevant with hiring managers, which might connect to some of the people in the audience too, is managing that process and setting the expectations. We have plenty of work to do here at Best Buy, and we have plenty of roles. And if I was a manager, it's going to be pinging me, emailing me where are we at with the role that I'm looking to help them fill. I have to make sure I pause that and say, if I'm answering a text from you, if I'm answering an email from you, I'm not out looking for that talent. So I want to make sure that I let them know about the expectations that I have. Being prepared and being the subject matter expert on talent, that's something that I have to show up to do. I have to show up and have a say-do ratio. We say that at Best Buy, and do what I say I'm going to do. How do I have discernment and good judgment on the talent that I'm putting in front of them? How do I know their business? So I take the time to stay relevant, learn the business, know their business. And then what that helps me do is adapt quickly to changing skill sets that we see currently, and as Jess talked about, in the future, because we know we are going to have roles that change in the future. One of the things that we think about that's a trend that's going on is how do we guide the managers for onboarding during this virtual environment? Because when we are in the office working face to face, you could go from meeting to meeting with your employee and talk about what that acronym meant. Now you have to be a little bit more purposeful in taking that time. It doesn't have to be formal, but now you have to put time on the calendar, you have to put time on a Zoom and say, okay, did you understand that meeting? What questions do you have from that? Because as we go from meeting to meeting and Zoom calls, you don't have that opportunity to ask those questions. When I talk about expectations of the recruiter, what we're looking at is how do we come to market? So Best Buy uses market analysis, so we can talk about certain roles that where they're going to be. So for instance, this one that's displayed is a data scientist. How hard is that going to be for data scientists to fill in the Minneapolis market? Are we going to have to go national for this search? So we are bringing tools to help the hiring manager make decisions. And for me, it helps me stay relevant. So the hiring manager will know that I'm taking care of his business. The expectations I say that are on both of us is ensuring that the slate of candidates is diverse. And as we know, that gets harder and harder, as in Minneapolis, our diversity isn't that broad when you look at, for instance, people of color. So how do we make sure that we hire the diverse candidate? We have to understand the makeup of the business that they run. There are going to be gaps in diversity. There's going to be gaps in gender. How do we figure that out and make sure we know that before we start the process of hiring a person to fill their role? We also know that we have to look at the turnover. So turnover within the organization changes, and during these times, we've seen a little trend of the female workers, to Jess's point, talking about the pressures of not being able to do both. So they resign. So we want to make sure that we talk about that and give the employees the resources that they need to be able to work from home and do the things that they need to do so they can stay engaged and be a productive employee. The way we do that, the tools that I use, again, to stay relevant, is access to an in-house applicant tracker. We have that where we keep all of our employees, all of our applicants. We keep them in a database, and we can access that database and reach out to candidates. So we do that. And again, it goes back to that candidate applicant experience. How do we send them a note once in a while and just check in with them? We also use Calendly. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but it's just an easy way of making it seamless. So we send out a note to the candidate and say, okay, when can you meet? And they'll put it on the calendar. We don't have to go back and forth on your calendar, my calendar. We have standardized templates that we use as well for what we call our PSM, which is our partnership strategy meeting or intake meeting. We have questions that are on there that are standard, so we can just roll through that. And our phone interviews are also standardized, so we can make sure that we're asking consistent questions to every applicant. And these questions are based off the way Best Buy leads, and we lead by values, and so we have those that are guided by that. We also look at Google. We do Google X-rays. We use LinkedIn quite a bit. We use Monster. So if you find yourself looking for roles, that's how we're going to reach out and connect with people. Now, we think about all of the things that has changed, how things are evolving. One of the things that I will say that's not new in HR, if we want to look at the things that we need to be consistent on, making sure that the resume is updated and correct. There's so many times that I see resumes that aren't up to date. That's the stuff that we can control. That hasn't changed with our new AI systems. We are going to have to fill online applications. So how do we do that? How do we make sure we slow down and take the time to answer the questions correctly? Because a lot of times I'll see people that are perfect for the role, but they answer the question wrong because they may have not slowed down to take a look at the question. Be ready for the interviews. I think even if it's digital, if it's video, if it's on the phone, do some homework, prepare, show up, because a lot of times it's not the case. We'd be surprised. And as a recruiter, I understand, and I'm good with if a child screams in the background, a dog barks in the background. I understand that that's what we are in. That's our time. Because at the end of the day, it always falls back on to people, the people connections. So my parting words is I'm glad we're doing things like this, because that's that network. How do you keep your network strong and water your network and keep it strong and active when you might need to call upon it? That's my quick presentation. I apologize for the share screen, or not share screen, lack of. Blame my head, not my heart, but I'm turning it back to Lisa.
Thanks, Jason. And no worries. I've learned anything, as you just said, my biggest learning, I think, out of all of this is to have grace for people, whether that's your dog barking, Bill's 3-month-old child that he has in the background, which has been very quiet, Bill. I'm very, very impressed. But first of all, thank you to all of you on the panel. This has been absolutely great. I took lots of notes, and if you were getting dinged by Twitter, I was tweeting about all of you as we were going through this. So hopefully you got a few new followers as we were going through this. But I'm going to turn it over to Reagan and to Deb now. We're going to bring the entire group of panelists back on to camera. So if your cameras aren't on, feel free to pop them on, show us your smiling faces. And this is your turn. It's your chance to ask questions, to share thoughts. You know, we want to get the most out of this time because, as Jason said, keeping our networks relevant, keeping our education, the change, and the rapid speed of that up to date, and making sure that we're staying educated is impossible some days. But you have wonderful people here that can help you out. So with that, Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you and Reagan. If you do have questions, folks, put them in the chat, and we will make sure we get to them here in the next couple of minutes.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And I've got my video is able to be started by the host. Wonderful. Okay, we do have some questions in the chat. We're really excited. Again, keep sending your questions in. What we want to hear from you. I mean, this is really an interactive ability for you to ask some of your questions about what's going on out there. And, you know, really the first one is going to be actually for our first presenter who spoke earlier, who started the whole thing off for us. So Amy, thank you for being our very first speaker and sharing some of those insights that you've had in terms of what you're doing at Namely. But, you know, as you start to think about, you know, there's this talk about the second wave. We just saw in London that they've put down additional restrictions and things like that. You know, as you think about wellness and relating to this possibly not going back to the office anytime soon, taking even into what Jess is saying as well about the way we work, you know, what is Namely thinking? You know, you talked about the additional holiday, but what other things are you contemplating about implementing?
Sure. Well, thanks for letting me to be the first question too. I feel like I keep getting to be first. It's awesome. No pressure. You know, so I'll give you just a little bit of insight about Namely before I answer the question. Before we had COVID, the majority of our employees are actually based out of our New York office or in a hub in Atlanta, but we also had offices in San Francisco, LA, and Austin, as well as a portion of our people remote. And so when we approach this, going into our remote environment, we went with an assumption that we may not reopen for the next 18 months or potentially in some places ever. And actually at that stage made the decision to shut down our San Francisco office right away, permanently, and look for someone to rent that space at some stage after when people start re-entering space. In our Atlanta facility, our lease is actually coincidentally up at the end of December. We announced just last week that we will not be reopening even between now and the end of December. We have to decommission that space anyway. So to bring people back, even if it was safe right now, to move them back out isn't really a way that we're going. In our New York facility, we have reopened for volunteers only. We did that as part of a mental health initiative more than an initiative to get people back into our facilities. People who have been in their apartments, their studio apartments for the last 6 months have actually been asking to get out and to come in, knowing that we put the right safety protocol in place from a physical perspective. So back to your question, we are there. We are in a place where we've already made some decisions that we're not bringing people back into a physical location. And so as we start to think about how we look at that, we're starting with a couple of key pieces. One is, what are our employees asking for and needing? And that has evolved throughout the course of this piece. In the beginning, people were just making sure that they had the right technology and just trying to fulfill their physical requirements. As we go through, we find that people are asking for more flexible work schedules. We're seeing more people take advantage of the COVID leave as it relates to childcare. And we're seeing, you know, people looking for, you know, like I said, the flexible hours or, you know, split kind of work schedules. So we're looking at how we can evaluate those. But the question still, for the people who are in New York who want to physically come in, can do that. The reality is most people don't want to do that yet. There's a lot of public transportation barriers that people are still concerned about. It's not about being in our facilities, it's about getting to our facilities. And so in that respect, we're going to just continue down the path that we are a remote workforce. We've informed people that until there is a safe vaccine that's readily available, we don't expect anyone to come back in. And so one is finding out from our employees. Two is going back to our values. One of our values is around giving back. And so we've looked at how we can be doing more things to give back to our communities without necessarily physically being together. Posting remote volunteer opportunities, partnering with organizations. We're a small business, a startup, so partnering with supporting other people who are trying to get startups off the ground, for example, is something that we're looking at doing. We've added this mental health day. We'll continue to evaluate if that makes a difference in people's lives and how they stay together. And then we're really evaluating all of our ERG programming, how we roll out programming. You know, while COVID has brought a lot of negative things, it's also brought a lot of positive things. We used to have very event-based office-based events. We've now had to become more inclusive on how we run events and how we communicate. We also continue to provide communication tools to get people's questions answered so that as things start to change and shift. We use Slido a lot. If anyone's familiar with Slido, provides you the opportunity to do word clouds by posting a question, but it also provides a platform for people to ask questions, and our leadership team monitors it to share back information as people grow and change. I don't know, you know, people are getting a lot of Zoom fatigue, so we're actually seeing less focus on virtual happy hours and more focus on ways where we can bring people together. So we've started up small group lunches in places where we have, you know, 4 to 5 people who want to come and meet in a park, and we're paying for lunch if people want to get together. We're rolling out snack box. Now I can't remember the name of the company, but there's a company where you can send basically a gift card to people to build their own snack box. So everybody can get their own snacks. Namely, historically, it's been a very food-based culture. We've set up an account with DoorDash so that we can say we're still having our lunch served at our all hands meeting. You just order it yourself. Here's the code, and we get a corporate centralized billing. So trying to keep some of the things that really were part of who we were, and how we can transition that into a remote environment, but also looking for new ways on how we can continue to build our culture forward. We've added a physical health benefit through PeerFit Digital, where people can there's a fitness class, but you can invite people to, and it's pre-recorded, but you can invite people to go do it with you. And so we're looking at how through our year-end period, which is our busiest time for our call center, we can set up 15-minute classes for people to join and get that break to physically get up and do something together as well.
That's fantastic. No, I mean, I think, you know, as we think about how we move into these different pieces, and a lot of what we've talked about today too really falls into how do we work at home and the mental health piece that's there, but also the benefits. And I think, I'll open it up to the panelists then too, to just comment on anything else that you would say is in terms of like this wellness that we need to continue as we look at this different way we do work. And we're at home and we have that less human interaction. We're going to get to that question in just a minute too, but I'll open it up to the panel if they have anything they wanted to add.
Amy, I just love that you guys are going for it intentionally and getting creative, thinking outside of the box on how do we circle our tribe up? How do we really reach out to virtual folks? So I just commend you guys for what you're doing.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate it.
Great. Reagan, do you have our next question then?
Yeah. We'll just jump over to Jess. A question for you. You talked a lot about how work-life balance is going away, but how can companies encourage their employees to take breaks, to take vacation, to shut off the laptop at 5 o'clock? You know, when our home and our work is more blurred now than ever, how do employers give their employees grace?
Yes, one of my favorite words as well, along with permission. And I think it's really about permission to put up boundaries where you need them. I did say it's a positive thing that we've blurred the line. I've always hated work-life balance because it implies that the two are mutually exclusive, that they can't coexist, that they have to, that it's like a seesaw, like a teeter-totter, you know, like one can be elevated while the other is at rest, and then the other can be elevated, or it's like this fine balancing act, and the bar is like my sanity or something. Like I've never liked work-life balance. I think that it's more of an integration, and I think it's okay that the line has been erased or that it's been blurred, because it leaves it up to us to put the boundaries in place where we need to. There's something fantastic about creative, flexible work models, distributed work models. That's really fantastic, but it also means that it's up to me to say, this is when I'm available, and this is when I can be productive, and this is when I'm not, because I have to prioritize. I have to work on something else right now. I'm not a fan of multitasking either. Multitasking means I'm can I say half-assing? That I'm just doing everything less. Single tasking means I'm focusing on this because it's a priority and it's important and I want to do it well. And so an example of something I've done personally, when my 3 kids went back to 100% virtual school, I asked my employee, I didn't have to ask, I knew it would be okay, but some need to know that this is okay, to redesign your work and your life. And I basically asked for my team's support. I said, you know, it's really great that everybody else has Saturday and Sunday as their weekends and you do what you want on your weekends. I need to call something else my weekend. I need Tuesdays and Wednesdays to be mine, because that's when I have to be hands-on with 3 little kids, with their Chromebooks and their schedules and their video conferencing. And my Saturdays and Sundays, unfortunately, are work days for me by choice. That's when I can be heads down. I can focus on quiet. I do a lot of content development. That's actually a better time. I'm so much more efficient building webinar decks and writing articles and doing all of the stuff that I try to multitask during the day when my Slack is going crazy and people are emailing me and calling me and I have 20 minutes before I have to jump to the next meeting. So yeah, I'm kind of doing the double shift I warned everybody against, but it's mine. I designed this because it works for me. And I have a team it takes a village, right? I have a team that can cover for me. It's okay to redesign work to fit your life, not redesign your life to fit your work. We have options, and that's where grace and permission comes in. And you have to ask for support. Working parents, working moms, ask for support. It's there, or should be.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. That's great advice to kind of make your work fit into your life in a way that makes sense for you. So yeah, Deb, next question.
All right. Yeah, for one of our attendees, the question that we had in the chat box was, you know, really out to the panel is that this individual had said, I'm all for the flexible model, but what are your opinions about the future impact of less human interactions, that face-to-face interaction that we love to be a part of, and this move to more of the virtual interactions? I think, Amy, you even mentioned Zoom fatigue there too. You know, as humans who thrive and grow through this live interaction, what will the future hold for us? To the panel.
Yeah, I know that came in while I was speaking. This is something we've been talking a lot about at LeapGen and with our Now of Work community. We get questions daily, literally. Like we talk a lot about technology. You know, we get questions and we help enterprise companies design their workforce solutions, HR technology. But more than technology, more than any other conversation we have, we get asked about boosting employee morale, keeping employees connected connected to each other, not just connected to systems, but how do we keep people feeling cared for and feeling a sense of connection to their work, to values, to the organizational mission, to each other. There's some Gartner research that came out a few months ago, but definitely in the middle of the pandemic, that shows 7 in 10 companies are permanently instilling more flexible work from home policies. So this isn't going away. This is the new and permanent normal. And 41% of people feel completely disconnected. In fact, 26% of people report feelings of severe isolation. So even though we're making great strides from a technological perspective of, all right, everybody's got to be, in this distributed work model, does everybody have system access? Does everybody know how to log in? Everybody's on Zoom and Slack, and we have Microsoft Teams and tools galore. Like there's absolutely no problem connecting people. But do we feel a sense of connection? Do I wake up in the morning and feel the same, vigor that I feel when I'm sitting around a conference room table and whiteboarding with my colleagues? Or how do you replace that sense of connection? And how do you keep people's morale up when mental health, mental wellness, when people are keeping a million plates spinning and work is just one thing I have to think about? I don't have the benefit of like this separation, between the two anymore. And it's a real issue. Just a few things, and I mean, Amy already shared a bunch of things. I think it's really important to create space, to be intentional about creating space. I have non-work meetings, no meeting. I just create time to connect with my team members where we don't talk about work. I just want to check in. I'm not checking up on you. I'm checking in on you. How are you? Do you have what you need? And I'm not talking about a login. Do you have what you need? Are you okay? How's life? Like you have to carve out space for that. And in a really cool way, we're getting to know each other better and differently than we might have otherwise, because it is so blurred. So sort of embrace that and create space for that. It's still a human connection through a screen, but you've got to be really intentional about showing care and creating connections that aren't just system connections.
And I would say, Jess, just echoing off of that, that it's not only good for the person on the other end of the Zoom screen, it's good for us, because we were all wired for relationship and in-person relationship. And we can all remember in our corporate careers, traveling to that big sales event, sales kickoff, or the quarterly business review, or the quarterly executive team meeting. And it didn't matter what you felt about your company and your level of engagement, you always felt better being around your people in person. And much of that is focused on the human, the personal side. And out of that comes amazing things, amazing insights, trust is built. So I'm so glad you said that, the non-meeting meeting, because that's absolutely, even the meetings, I think sometimes we're a small company, and we go around and just say, hey, how are you doing? And it has nothing to do with the business of the company. It's all about your personal situation, because then we're all informed. We know how to best support our teammates, and it just builds tremendous trust and transparency there. So that's a great comment.
I would agree with Jess too in that space. So my team happens to meet every day for 15 minutes in the morning. We set that up in the beginning initially as a check-in to make sure we were all okay moving to a remote environment. And we just like having that water cooler talk. There's no more water cooler in the place to talk about what was on television or what someone did the night before. But I also think there's a permission to not show up that goes along with our daily meeting, where some days you just can't do it. And you've got enough other things and there's enough pressures on that it's okay to say, I need some space and I'm not coming today, but I'll come tomorrow and fill you in on, my newest Netflix binge. So I think there's a little bit of both.
Well,
Yeah,
and I would, sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Well, no, I was saying even at Best Buy, when we have 5,000 people on our campus, I mean, it's a relationship-based company, and we expect, so people are putting catch-ups on, so I agree. And sometimes when you have video, our chief human resource officer gave us permission not to turn the camera on. If you don't feel like, it's a camera date, turn it off. So that human connection is key, but this is the new norm. We have to make sure we develop those relationships and be intentional about it.
Well, I think that's an important point that you bring up, Jason, which was what I was going to comment is it is okay also to not just do a Zoom meeting. Like, I don't remember the last time somebody actually sent me a calendar invite and just said, hey, I'll call you on your mobile. Like, I appreciate that, because for me, I'm the type of person who, if I have a conference call that I don't have to take copious notes on, I'll pop in my AirPods and I'll go get on my bike, or I'll go outside for a walk. I can't do that and feel like I'm there fully when I'm on a Zoom call. So I think we have to, I love that your CHRO is giving people permission to turn their cameras off, because we need to give people permission to turn everything off and go back to some of the basic things that we used to do once in a while. That's okay. It really is.
Right. Well, I mean, even if you think about it, in the offices we had, a lot of people had treadmills that you were taking meetings and conferences on. And so that has changed even the wellness up for those of us who, when you were in the office and you're taking those conference calls on those working treadmills, and now you're at home and if we're all on video, it changes that too. And how do you keep that wellness piece up that you had in the office and bringing it home then too? So I think, no, this is an awesome discussion. Reagan, I think we have some more questions.
Yeah, Jason, I'll put you on the spot and switch gears a little bit. So you talked about your company going through massive times of change. And when that happens, does your recruitment strategy change? Are you more focused on different types of individuals to bring into your organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we are really looking at the skill set. I mean, for a long time, we've looked at just the functional area. So when I said Mark is our chief inclusion and diversity officer, he came from supply chain because he had the skill set to lead organizations to, operational, to lead change. So where we're looking for different people, but we're really focusing on the skill sets. What skill sets do you bring to the organization that we can leverage in different functional areas? Because I think Jess talked about it too. It's going to change. So we didn't think that we'd have this kind of pandemic. I mean, when Best Buy 8 years ago, we had what we called Row. And when Hubert Lee came into the organization, he canceled that and said, no, we're a people person, we're a people company, we're going to be meeting in person. But now we're going to go back to kind of like a Row, but it's still about the skill sets.
Awesome. Deb, it looks like we have another question.
Ooh, we have one more question. This one, Jess, is for you. So here we go. I could not agree more that the need for some level of digital transformation is necessary to create a more frictionless experience for employees, managers, etc. You also mentioned that historically, HR systems are not generally intuitive, user-friendly, or even pretty, thinking the whole UI, UX, but we are seeing the rise of some pretty creative, intuitive, beautiful applications tools to drive employee engagement and performance. I've been trying to bring a new people management platform focused on employee performance, feedback, and engagement to my organization, but there's still much resistance to try new technology or tools for a number of reasons. One being we have an HRIS system, though not one that is flexible and intuitive enough for our needs. How should I go about articulating the need to try something new and not be afraid of new technology? Oh, I love that question.
I just put my email in the chat. You better email me and set up a little time. Yeah, so the first problem is that HR technology was always designed for HR tech administrators. It was designed for HR, payroll systems, performance management systems, even the ATS. We used back office systems and we faced them forward to people and said, navigate my mess of a filing cabinet. You figure out the 28 clicks to get the answer you need. We used back office technology, which wasn't even that great anyway, and it was designed for HR users, and we asked everybody else to figure it out. We called that our candidate experience. How awful, how embarrassing. And then we hired them, and it got worse. So that's the problem. We designed HR tech for HR, and we use back-end systems as front-end user interfaces. And we call people users. I mean, there's so many problems with that. You just opened a can of worms here. So I think it's really an exciting time to consider. We have what we call an equation for digital success at LeapGen, and I can run you through it. I could bring it up on the screen, but it really starts with mindset, and then people, process, and then the technology. And the technology, the solution itself, the vehicle for your experience will reveal itself after you've done the other work. You've got to start at the other parts of the equation. And mindset is all about reimagining the experience that you're actually trying to deliver. What is the vision we have for our workforce? How do we want them to feel? How do we want them to connect and engage? What is the outcome? What are the business outcomes we're trying to drive here? And then you have to know your workforce. Who are your people? What do they want? What do they need? Where do they sit? How are they doing their work? So you have to map your workforce. You have to blueprint your workforce and know them. Why does Amazon know your people better than you do? Know your people, develop personas and the journey mapping and all of that stuff, and then design the experience. Do the design work. And these are new chops for HR people. I get it. You're not accustomed to being data scientists and experienced designers and all of that, but you can build those capabilities on your team or get them for yourself. You have to do that work. Once you've done all of that work, then 10% of that equation is the technology. Then the technology reveals itself, because now you need a vehicle to deliver that experience. And so I think the problem is that we start with the tech. We say, oh my gosh, this isn't working. People aren't engaged. People aren't productive. People aren't fill in the blank. We must need a new system. We must need a new piece of HR technology. And we invest a lot of money in HR technology to try to fix these business problems. And then the first thing we do is we throw our hands in the air and we say, the tech doesn't work. I probably have to switch after my contract is up. And we start this madness all over again. It's crazy. And that's because we didn't do the other work. And so I would love to engage with you. We offer a complimentary workshop called Mindset for Success. And it's all about understanding that approach so that when you get to the technology answer, you might already have it. It might be what you have. You just need to optimize it. Or it might be a new solution. And the solution might not be what you've traditionally considered as a piece of HR technology. Look at all the stuff we're using now, Microsoft Teams and Uber for Business and Slack and Zoom and all of these things that never were part of an HR technology suite before. You have to, sort of think outside the box a little bit. But once you've, reimagined the experience and done that design work, then you're able to think about some different options than you might have before. I would love to engage with you. We can offer some support for you.
That's great. And I think that it is what it is. How, what are we doing? How do we want to do that? And the technology becomes that support tool based on how you want to run your business and how you want to put your thoughts forward in terms of how am I going to engage employees and what are the things that go into it? And then what's the right technology to support that? So, I absolutely believe in that mindset too. So I think we're coming close to time. I don't know if we have another question or if we wanted to wrap it up at this point, but Reagan, did you have anything else that we needed to have?
No more questions unless we have time for one more, or you want to wrap, Lisa?
Yeah, I want to be cognizant. I know how busy people are, and giving up 90 minutes is usually kind of difficult. So again, I cannot say thank you enough to this wonderful panel, Jason, Ted, Jess, and Amy. It absolutely has been fantastic. And yes, Jason, I am thanking you. So it was great to have you all on. For those of you that joined us, again, November 18th, mark your calendars. We'll be going again from 1 p.m. to 2:30 Central. We'll have another kick-ass lineup of individuals to join us, talk about innovation around work and do our passion series. And if you're interested in getting more heavily involved, maybe being a speaker, I will drop my email right now into the chat very quickly, but please reach out to me. We would love to know if there's something you are passionate about hearing about and want to speak to it, or if we need to go find somebody to do that for us. But thank you all. Bill, thanks for bringing us together, and stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone,
everyone.
for joining us
Thank you.
today. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.